So now we're going to talk about sealing record sets. I need to mention a couple of things first. As background, in order to be compliant with PD 21.1, which is requirements for the retention of records, as of January 2020, project records which require signatures shall be electronically signed. So an example of a project record that would require signature would be the change order form that we just demoed earlier. Adobe Sign shall also be used for electronic sealing of record sets by engineers and surveyors. And just to know, CDOT is implementing the use of another software program for electronic signatures on documents which require a CDOT controller or state controller signature. An example of this would be an IGA. So the IGAs will be signed with a different software program. The third thing I want to mention is that Adobe Sign can handle documents as large as 50 megabytes. So when I say that, you're likely thinking most of my record sets are greater than 50 megabytes. So if the document is greater than 50 megabytes, you're going to have to do one of two things. You're going to have to make it smaller by printing it to PDF. That will consolidate the image quite a bit. If that doesn't get it to less than 50 megabytes for a single file, then you're going to need to break the document up into however many 50 megabyte or less component pieces it takes. There is a separate training that's been recorded that shows you how to break a document up into manageable pieces that Adobe Sign can handle and how to reassemble that into a portfolio so that they appear as one file after they've been sealed. And there's also a page limitation of 999 pages. And it's either 999 pages or 50 megabytes. So most local agency projects are not that large, but that's important to know. So go to the send environment, and we will leverage what we've already learned and seal a record set. So now I'm going to sign into Adobe Sign. My name automatically autofills. With CDOT, we have an enterprise ID. You may have something different. Okay. So now we've landed on the landing page, which is the send environment. E-signature applications, by and large, require two signatures for the document to be executed by the program. So what if you're the only person sealing a record set? There's a very special way that you get around the fact that you have to have two recipients when you're really the only one. The way this is done is by not starting by entering email addresses here. You need to use something called a recipient group, and that's located right here. So you click Add Recipient Group. You put in a dummy name. You can say AAA or anything you want to say for your group name, and then you start to enter the email recipients. So the first one would be my name, and you can see here it populates Kathy.Cole as the first recipient. And then the second recipient that we would enter, I would start to type my name again, and I would add +1 before the @ sign, and that would be the second recipient. Now that person doesn't really exist, but that's a way to trick the system. So you would continue to enter your you would continue to enter your agreement name, you would make sure your message is correct, and you would drag and drop a file. This will allow a workflow to send the document directly to me because this other person, this +1 person, doesn't actually exist. That is how you trick the system. You get a lot of errors in this regard, so you need to understand how this works. Okay, so I'm going to back out of this because we want to, in this case, we have Eric here with us, and we are not going to be entering a recipient group where we have two people. So I'm going to type my email name in, And then the next person that's going to seal the record set would be Eric. Okay, so I have my two folks that I want to sign, and I want them to sign in this order. And one thing I want to stop and mention is if you have an email address and it doesn't automatically populate, then you most probably want to go and copy and paste the email address into the recipient field. And the reason for this is if you make a mistake, then it throws the whole system off and you pretty much have to start again. I want to talk, before we move on, I want to talk about roles. So when you have the little pen symbol, you are a signer. There are other roles that are available to you. So one role is the role of an approver. So you could do, for instance, an expense report or something using Adobe Sign, and the approver would be actually the second person, or the admin, who would look over the form to make sure that it's correct. So you can assign someone the role of an approver. You can also assign a certified recipient. This might be used if you want someone to acknowledge that they've seen a document. And then lastly, down at the bottom is a delegator. A delegator is someone who doesn't sign themselves, but they assign the person who does sign the document. In the case of a record set where we have a consultant engineer who has left the company, you may want to use this feature. You might not know who the person is that has replaced them, and the principal that owns the company will either sign it for them or sign someone who will. And that's what a delegator does. The delegation role can be used to assign the responsibility to someone else to determine who needs to sign the record set. So those are, you just click the caret to get to those roles. All right, so the default message for this particular email is correct because we are going to be sealing a record set. So now I'm going to show a split screen again by hitting the Windows key and the right arrow. And go get the demo set. And now I'm going to drag and drop this file to the body of my email. And you can see this is spinning. While this is spinning, you're not going to be able to do any other action. I'm going to make this large again so we can see it. Okay, in this case, I've borrowed a set of plans from the city of Inglewood and want to give them thanks for letting me use this set of plans. So the message then is correct. I'm going to highlight it and again do Control-C and paste it here in the message field. Okay, so I have the email signatures correct. I have the message correct. I have the file uploaded. I'm going to set a reminder again, and I'm going to set it for every business day. Okay. Now I could send out a private message to someone, which I might do if this were the first time that they were sealing a record set. You have that option. Okay, I'm going to leave preview and add signature fields checked and click next. So we have to wait until the computer finishes processing the document. So now we're at the landing page on Adobe Sign. You can see that the black bar at the bottom is in the way, so I'm going to click X to hide it. And it had been set up for like an 8.5 by 11 document, so this slider bar allows us to scroll back and forth on the sheet. We try to seal record sets in the lower right-hand corner because we want this to be consistent, whether it's one engineer or 20 engineers signing. We want the size of the seals to meet AES board rules, which is 1 5 inches square or 1.625 inches. We also need to limit the scope of the authority of that which we are sealing, whether it's for bridge work, road design, or whatever it is. So templates have been created to minimize the work so that the size and the location is consistent. Current AES rules require each and every sheet of a plan set to be sealed. So here's the first signer. That's me. So how do we use templates? In the upper left-hand corner, where it says Field Templates, select the drop-down, and the drop-down again. And you will want to select Participant 1 template because that matches with Recipient 1. This is very important. You don't ever want to associate Recipient 3's with Participant 2's template. You want to keep them in alignment. So if you have Recipient 1, you want to use Template 1. If you have Recipient 2, you want to use Template 2. So I'm Recipient 1, so I'll select Template 1. And I'm going to select Apply. And there it is. You'll see the date field, the stamp field, and the limitations field. So we need to move these because they overwrite the approved by information that was on this set of plans. So how do we move? First you select the Shift key and you select the date field. You keep your Shift key held down. You click the stamp. You click the limitation field. And then you let up on the Shift key. Once it does that, you can see they're all highlighted. You can then click and drag these. So I can drag them here. I can drag them over here. Because there's more space available, I'm going to put it above the approved by block that's being used by, in this case, the City of Inglewood. Okay, that's on the title sheet. Now I'm going to scroll down and pick out one other sheet for me to sign. And I'm not going to pick the M&S Standards plans list because that sheet does not need to be sealed. Okay, so I'm going to, in this case, apply the template on sheet 3 and click Apply. And again, it's the same thing. In this case, I could adjust this to make it perfect, but I'm not going to worry about it at this point. When you're laying out your plan sheets, you'll want to try to leave space down in the bottom for the stamp and the limitations field. So I'm not going to be able to do anything with this set of plans, but that's something that you, when you're designing your sheets, keep that in mind. And now I'm going to set up some sheets for the second recipient, which is Eric, to sign. So I'm going to go and select him as the recipient. I'm going to get a field template. Okay, and I'm going to select the drop-down. I'm going to give him Participant 2's template. Okay, and select Apply. And there it is. Now you can see it's not aligned correctly. So I'm going to click the Shift key, select the date field, the stamp field, the limitations field, and I'm going to move those all at one time. And you can see I didn't pick up the date field. The date field is still there. So I'm going to move that separately. The tricky part is if you don't move them at one time, they may not be in the correct spot. So I'm going to do that again. I'm going to delete this. I'm going to delete this and right-click and delete. And I'm going to start again. So I'm going to pick recipient 2. I'm going to go in and get the field template. I'm going to start on page 4. I'm going to make sure I have participant 2's template. I'm going to select apply. Now I'm going to select the shift key. I'm going to hold that down. I'm going to select the date field. Make sure it stays highlighted this time. Then select the stamp field and the limitations field. When I let up on the shift key, they're all 3 highlighted. I can move them as a block. I'm going to adjust it so that they're within the borders. Okay? And I'm going to do the same thing for one more sheet for Eric to sign. I'm going in and select, again, participant 2's template on page 5. Click apply. I'll select the shift key and the date field, the stamp field, and the limitations field, and I'm going to adjust those appropriately. Okay. All right, so we're ready for Eric to sign. And you would do the same thing for the rest of the plan sheets. Depending on the plan set, you could be the only signer, and there are ways to make this process faster. Right-click on the box and select Repeat Field on all pages. If you do that, the stamp and the limitations and the date field will appear on every sheet. So you may have a large number of M&S standard sheets which are already sealed and you don't need to seal those. If you apply the fields on every page, you'll need to go back and delete it from the sheets that don't need it. If you're the only signer, then you need to decide what is the most efficient approach to putting the default text and stamp on the plan set. Adobe Sign does not allow you to repeat it within a range of pages. It's either all or nothing. So one last thing to say before I send this set of plans to Eric to seal. It is the responsibility of the local agency's person in responsible charge to know and ensure that a record set is signed or sealed properly. In the past, the design engineer of record didn't have to know exactly which engineer signed which page, but now you need to know. If you set up someone to sign the wrong sheets, you have to start all over again. You cannot modify the document once it's gone out and been executed by anyone. You can't change it. So it's important to invest some time before you set up a record set to make sure you know who signs what pages. One approach that we've seen that seems to work on large sets is to send out the record set with everyone designated as an approver. They don't have to approve anything, but it lets them look at the document and then email the person back if there needs to be an adjustment to who signs which page. The only way to maintain security and to have a document that stands up in court is if it can't be changed once it's in the workflow. But that puts the burden of setting up the plan sheets correctly on the person sending it out. So now I'm going to hit sign, then send. And it's preparing the document. Okay? So over here on the left it says start. I don't need to know which pages I start. When I click on start, it takes me right to the page where I'm supposed to sign. Okay? Here's where a tooltip appears. It says please enter the limitation of the scope, your authority with respect to the plans after the default text. I click here and say, for instance, plans and specifications. CIFICAT. That's what I'm limiting my authority to. I say next. Okay, here's another pop-up. Do not resize your seal. The this image size complies with AES board rules. So I click. I'm going to select my stamp. I'm going to select an image and select Apply. Okay. Let's see what that does. So I have to go select an image. So I'm going to say Control V, Control V. Okay, there's my image. Select Apply. And my seal is applied. So I go and I say Next. And I'm going to say Plans and Specifications. I'm going to leave that. I'm going to click to upload my stamp. There's my stamp. I'm going to click to sign. And the document is going to Eric.
Okay, checking to see for the email from Kathy. Here it is, requesting my signature on the plans for the bike lane. As with the earlier document, all I need to do is to click the Review and Sign button in the email. That will open the record set in a browser. Here's the message. Please sign and seal this document. And the Start tab that I can click to jump to where I need to sign and seal. Scope of my authority, I'm not an engineer, so I don't have a real seal, I don't have a real scope. I'm just going to say bike path design for now. And we did create a stamp for me, so let's see, I'll select the image. There we go. Temporary seal. Apply that. In my name. Okay, it's added the seal. I can click Next to go to the next page. And there's the stamp. I'm done with the 2 pages that Kathy asked me to seal. Click the button for Click to Sign. Document's processed and returned to Kathy.
If I were working in my email, I would get an email message that says that Eric has completed the signature process and that the plans have been returned to me. I would go into the Manage environment. I would see the set of plans and see that the documents have been signed. What does a recipient who is not the design engineer of record have to seal a set of plans? You don't need to have Adobe Sign if you are a recipient, a signer, or a sealer. What you need to have is a seal which meets board requirements. The seal can be purchased from acornsales.com for $15. Acorn Sales guarantees that the image meets the board rules. A person has to have that seal and a signature image combined into one image in order to seal a set of plans. So if you go into history, let's go into history now, and scroll down, you can see that the document was signed by me. And why aren't you there? Okay. So now I refreshed and I can see that the document was created by me. The document was signed by me. It was sent to Eric for signatures. It was viewed and signed by Eric, and it has been completed. So once the record set is fully signed, You should send a copy to the CDOT project manager and also place the record set into Project Share, which is connected to CDOT's electronic document management system, ProjectWise. There are separate instructions and a separate video for how this works. And that concludes this demo.